Welcome to the Mucked Up My Self-Care podcast.
I'm Jill from New York.
And I'm Linda from Tasmania.
We are two moms from opposite sides of the world who are living, demonstrating, and helping moms across the world build their self-care asset bank.
Ready to dive in? Messy, interrupted, imperfect, and most of all mucked up. Let's get going.
Okay.
Here we are. Hello. We're going to dive straight in, I think. Highs,
Yes,
lows.
we are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. Linda, do you want to start us off or do you want me to start us off?
I can probably start us off.
Cool.
So a high would be, gosh, I just had one. I did get a lot more sleep last night than usual, like double, like an 8-hour sleep. It was quite amazing. And I've been having a bit of a track on my watch about what sort of levels of sleep I'm getting, like the deep, the core, the restorative sleep. And my restorative sleep was much higher than normal. So that was a definite high because it's helped a lot today. And somehow I've still managed to have a few more coffees than normal. But anyway, I think that was just a Monday thing. My lows, we've gone back to cold weather. We've gone back to 15s, 16s, which I don't know, I can't convert it quick enough into Fahrenheit.
I have no idea.
It would be probably, oh goodness, if anyone's got a calculator in front of them. Jill's drastically trying to convert on a phone as the cat comes into the picture.
59 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay.
There you go.
That's about what it is here right now. I mean, it's
there you go. Wow.
40,
There you go.
it's 46 here. It's like getting up to 50 during the day.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we've gone back to that after having double that temperature in Celsius, but obviously for a few weeks, and now we've gone back to rain all
You're
weekend.
still technically in spring, right? So
technically for a few more days.
For days, yeah.
Yeah.
December.
So I'm looking forward to some hotter weather. It's meant to be a hot summer for us. So that'll be...
It's supposed to be a really nasty winter for us. So
yeah.
That will be fun while we're recording it's season. You dying in sweat and me here bundled up with snow background.
For anyone who wants to see us on YouTube, why? One extreme to the other. Anyway, highs and lows. What about you? Go for it.
Okay, well, let's see. Oh my gosh, we did a dinner at our friend's house. Oh, we're recording this as we're coming off of Thanksgiving holiday in the US. So we did a Friendsgiving with my neighbor who has a daughter who is just 2 months older than Declan. So we went next door to her house and it was fantastic because she ended up having somebody over that watched the kids without us like asking. I don't know the situation completely on how they all knew each other, but Bobby and I sat and were adults with the other adults and not running after children or being involved in play. And it was the best event I think that we both have ever been to since having Declan, because he was just able to be a kid and we were able to be ourselves, and it was great to sit down and not be interrupted. It was so nice. And I think from now on, any party that we go to or host, we're hiring a babysitter because it was fantastic. I will forever now do this because, yeah, if you're able to do it, I highly recommend hiring somebody to watch your children or the children that will be at the place, because it was this huge load lifted off of both of us. It was amazing. Definitely my high for the week. Let's see. The low. think the low is again like cyclical stuff. Happy period, fun, depression, settled in, sickness. I had a fever for a day right before, and this is the second time it's happened in PMS that I got a fever. And I'm like, this is the weirdest thing ever to happen now. So it's, yeah, that's my low for this week. Just this PMS crap.
Mhm.
And
Yep. Mhm.
now
Here we are
season
again.
stuff. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
mm,
Yep. So when it, because we don't really practice Thanksgiving over here in Australia. However, I can certainly think about our holidays and all that sort of thing of Christmas and when we go away and that sort of thing. Aside from having a babysitter on tap,
yeah,
how do
could you
you?
imagine
Oh
bringing a
my gosh!
babysitter on vacation with you?
What
You know,
are they
people do
called?
it.
Yes, nannies. And I remember someone joking about the fact that mum and dad were up in first class and the kids were back in business class or something like that in the day and just didn't see the parents at all. And the parents were like, well, catching up on sleep and having champagne and all that sort of thing. It'd be so bizarre though. I think it'd be really weird for me. I'd be like, what are they doing? What are they up
I'd be
to?
panicking if I were separated.
What is that? Yeah. I know. I remember when I was traveling overseas. So we went overseas last year with a 2-year-old. No, he was under 2 because we wanted to
Mm,
go before
they
his plane
charge.
tickets they charge.
Yeah.
A 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, all of which had never been overseas before, all of which I'd never been overseas before, never been on a
Wow.
long flight before.
Really?
And yeah, it blew my mind some of the things that come up in those moments. And I think I've talked about this before, but a big thing for me was food, actually,
Yeah.
because all of a sudden the kids were put in a situation where they had to decide from a menu, which was often in another language completely. They had to decide what they were going to eat a lot more than usual, because
Mm-hmm.
usually they don't decide what we're going to eat a lot of the time. They contribute. Josh
Right.
chose a Thai beef, we call beef lard, I think. He chose the menu for the other night. Like he actually looked up on Google a recipe and decided to have Thai beef, and then we didn't have half the ingredients, so we had to improvise. We
Been
used
there.
lemon juice instead of lime juice, and we used onions instead of spring onions, and we
Mm,
used a whole heap of different ingredients, and it actually still turned out really well. However, a lot of the time they don't have to choose their breakfast, lunch, and tea. And because we
mm-hmm.
were eating a lot in restaurants or takeaway, which we don't normally do either, we don't do a lot of that really for us. We cook a lot of our meals. And so all of a sudden they had to decide all these things. And it was so stressful and it was so unexpected. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it, but it was so unexpected for me in the fact that they were already tired. And a lot of the time they were already hungry. So they had to both decide while they were hungry and tired and decide and then wait for it to be cooked and then wait for it to be served.
Like the
And
definition of hangry right there.
oh my
Oh my
gosh, it
gosh.
was just, and so it was just, and self-care out the window completely.
Yeah, because now you got to worry about taking care of them in a completely different way than you were even
Mm-hmm,
considering.
mm-hmm, completely. And usually I think, especially as mums, we tend to think about, well, I'll cook this tonight because I know it satisfies the needs of that child and me and that thing and this thing, and then I can have leftovers for lunchbox, and then I can do this, and then I can do that. You think of all those things as you're deciding a meal, and we just do that automatically. Sometimes it's a lot of our self-care practices to actually make it somewhat simple.
Or at least
In the
satisfy other
choices.
places. Yeah.
Yeah. And we still like to navigate some boundary pushing or comfort pushing, I should say, at times. I really love the fact that the kids can try some new foods occasionally and try some foods that they don't always love, because I don't think it should just be sausages and veg
Right.
every night, because that's going to get pretty old pretty soon. So I try to still have food which is a little bit out there for them, but not every night. So it's getting that balance.
Yeah.
And I think that is actually part of how I practice the self-care, meals and decisions and that sort of thing. But then when we're on holidays in a completely foreign country with completely foreign food, it's like, wow.
It's funny because I also know you guys do a lot of camping. So that has a whole other meaning to it when you're bringing everything with you. You already did that planning ahead of time to set yourselves up for the week there, because you don't have to you don't have those outside things to rely on. You have only yourself. So there's a difference even in there with the planning.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then that's also a difference in food menu that they're not always used to. So we do eat a fair few fresh fruit and veg in our meals and salads and that sort of thing. And we can't always take a lot of those camping because they don't last the week or two.
Yeah.
Not having fridge at your disposal or that sort of thing, it does make a difference as well. What is your own food been like camping or just holidays in general?
We've kind of been prepared with it because Declan's a snacker. So he's one of those grazing types, and when he wants it's more snacking and grazing than sit down full meals, which I think for toddlers it is and will be for a while, as they are growing boys and are always going to be eating things. But I think it wasn't the harder part for us so far has been when we have been staying with someone else with food, because they're like, well, what does he eat or like? And they try to accommodate, but there's really like only one or two things that he likes. So there's really not much. And we'll just bring it then. Like we'll bring all our snacks that we want, because we can at least on domestic flights bring that stuff. We haven't traveled abroad yet with Declan, so that's gonna be a feat in itself. But right now we're at the stage where everywhere we go, yes, we can get chicken fingers or chicken nuggets and mac and cheese at most places, and he does not experiment, so we'll just bring snacks then. And so be it.
We experiment a lot. Yes, a lot. Maybe I've got nothing to gauge it by. However, yeah, there's a lot of experimenting in this house with, and maybe it's also easier with influence of the older two
That's
as
what I
well,
was
because
thinking too, because your kids have each other to look at that, oh, well, they're eating it or they were involved in it. It's one thing that I guess that has piqued interest in trying things is that he's involved with preparing the meal. So he's like, oh, I want to help mommy
same.
cook. Okay, I'll try it then. And
yeah, so we have the older two now, they're cooking with us twice a week. And then Quinn's also often cooking, sometimes nearly every night. So yeah, and it's great to watch their development as far as that goes. So Quinn was peeling potatoes the other night and carrots and then chopping them up. It's like, well, because I chopped them, I'm just going to eat these bits, okay?
You didn't need those for the whole recipe, right?
Yeah. Yes. And I swear half the carrots were cooked at one rate,
For
and then the
sure.
other half were like a little bit crunchier. So that's fine.
Being that you did travel abroad, I'm assuming that meant you also had a time zone change.
Many,
And
many time zone changes.
that's
Yes.
one thing that we had trouble with. So Declan's first trip with me ever, we did solo. So it was just the two of us. And we flew from New York to California. And there's a 3-hour difference backwards for us with that. So New York is ahead and California is back. And we were up at 3 a.m. because that was 6 a.m. in New York time. And that's Declan's wake up time. And I felt so terrible for my aunt who we were staying with. But luckily they had a playground. And by the time the sun came up at 4:30, we were out the door walking to the playground. In this freezing ice cold mountain weather, waiting for the sun to warm everything up. We were not dressed right. So it was just like, that was my one unprepared that I don't think planning any self-care around on that trip would have prepared me for or helped me recover at all.
Yeah. Yep. And I think when we're talking about holidays and, as you say, vacations, and this time of year, there are so many unpredictable moments like that where perhaps you may have done it before. Even if you have done it before, you still can't predict what may happen. Maybe you did it with one kid 2 years ago and now you've got two. Maybe you did it, the time zone went forward and now you're going backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can go into all of those future sort of predictions. However, when we're trying to do that, it takes up a lot of brain space, I think.
Oh, yeah.
For us to then try and rehearse, well, maybe this could happen and maybe that could happen and maybe this could happen and maybe I could do that if this did happen and maybe I could do that if this didn't happen. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've got an hour to pack. Like you haven't actually done stuff that mattered. You've just been so busy going over it in your head and you're like, oh my gosh, now I need a holiday from the holiday.
Yeah.
A
Oh,
holiday
yeah.
before I get there.
Holiday
So,
before you get there, a holiday after you get there.
yeah. When you come home and have to unpack. Yeah, it's just so much of it is in our head and our head chatter, and
Yeah.
so much of it is inside us.
I think one positive thing, being that we do camping so frequently, is that we've kind of come up with a permanent camping list that I think can be applied to any holiday that we take then. Like, okay, we know, or even just overnights at grandma and grandpa's houses. So it's like we know we gotta pack, these stuffies, we gotta pack the sound machine, this thing, that thing. And then it's like, okay, we should just have an extra go bag always packed or something with an extra set of everything in it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of organization that goes into traveling and
Yeah.
holidays, or like you were talking about, dinners and going here, there, and everywhere, or hosting, or so many things that we need to think about and try and juggle.
I think that
And
was my one
then,
self-care thing as a permanent to-do list or
mhm,
checklist for packing.
yeah. And I
Like just
wonder if that's
okay,
actually thought of as a self-care thing. Our to-do lists thought of
right.
as a self-care thing.
I'm wondering if I mean, we've talked about to-do lists before and not being
Yeah.
productive for our self-care, but I think when it's set up like this for something that we end up repeating, not,
Mhm.
it doesn't need to be repeated frequently, but something where it's one less thing we're worrying about for that
Yep.
preparation step. Is that then
Mhm.
self-care? I think so. I think we're looking out for ourselves and our
Mhm.
sanity and getting out the door. Because I know I have really, really high travel anxiety. Um, just getting from like within the first 48 hours before I even get onto an airplane or start a road trip. So I know coming up as we're worrying about the next holiday that we're taking for Christmas break, that 48 hours before we leave, I'm going to be a hot mess trying to figure out what do we need to pack for another first, because we're going to take a road trip. It's going to be a first. So I have my checklist, what alterations now need to be made. So that's going to be something that I stress out about. Even though I have my checklist, I have to now make room for that in my calendar for my self-care.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know where that travel anxiety comes from? Have you explored that before?
um, I have no idea. I mean, it's most likely from childhood and making sure I have everything I need before we
Nearly
go
everything's
anywhere.
from childhood. Nearly
Well,
everything from
you
childhood.
know,
Ah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
It's
the
it's
not wanting to
confronting.
have the responsibility of us having to go buy something because I've forgotten it
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter anyway, you know. But then again, when you do lose your luggage on your honeymoon for 48 hours, yeah, you do panic and you will have anxiety traveling for the rest of your life.
Yep. We lost all our luggage coming back from Europe for 2 weeks, and then everybody else's bags turned up except mine. And mine took, I think, another 4 weeks after that. And so we had to try and call Singapore and Europe and Brussels and all of the places to try and chase it up. And it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also good reflection on how you can just make do if you really want to.
Yeah.
And a good lesson in don't take too many valuable things with you when you travel.
Yeah,
Don't
and to
take the
make sure
favorite shirt.
you listen to your
Yep.
mom when she says to pack stuff in your carry-on.
Mm-hmm.
So in
Mm-hmm.
case if your luggage does get lost.
Yes, indeed. Yep.
But um I wanted to ask, what was it like? Did you ever travel? Well, did you ever travel before you had kids? I'm hoping so.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Not
Yeah,
overseas, but yeah.
but regardless,
Yes.
the difference
Mm-hmm.
in traveling with kids and pre-kids.
Huge.
Oh my God.
Huge. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I think I still need the time after for getting back into the zone. But I feel that with kids, that holiday from your holiday is gonna have to be a lot longer than
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I
pre-kids.
remember a couple of times camping, for instance, and coming back and just completely losing my stuff because I was just so overwhelmed with coming back to all the washing and being tired and just wanting a shower. And then not getting a shower for hours and thinking, oh my gosh, I just want a shower, and just flipping my flip
Yeah.
at the tiniest little thing. And of course, it was a lot of stuff in me. Of course, nearly everything is in me. Like, and just looking back now and going, oh, yeah, I can see part of why that happened now. because I was completely overdone, overwhelmed, overpacked. And the pack for camping is very different from the pack up from camping when we'd had rain and mud and grass and stuff, and everything just ended up getting shoved in the car because it was wet. And so I was just done and felt like it wasn't long enough, felt like it hadn't gone the way that I'd rehearsed it in my head because it rained for nearly the entire time and the tents leaked and and so that was not my proudest moment. However, at the same time, I realized that that hatch after you come back, or maybe after you've hosted Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner, or there's lots of moments like that. It's not just when you've gone camping for 2 weeks or overseas or gone traveling. There's lots of moments like that where you're just so
You need to
desperate to regroup.
Yeah.
And that's very hard to do when you've got people who are also needing to regroup but don't have the skills yet to regroup because they haven't got the brain development. They just need an adult, and you don't want to be that adult right now. And it's so much. And I definitely want to get better at that.
Yeah.
However, again, I can't predict that. I can't always prepare for that. I can't always be the one who is the sane adult 100% of the time. I'd love to be, but I'm realistic about that too.
Well, for the next time that you do go, do you think that you are going to build that into your next camping trip or the next holiday you go on, being that you are coming up to a holiday season right now?
I hope so.
And how does that look, do you think?
I think I'll be sending Jill a couple of WhatsApp messages. maybe,
I need how you mucked up your week recording.
Maybe like, hey, I think we should jump on and do a podcast recording right now.
It's become our self-care.
Yeah. Look, just realizing all of the other stuff that other people have got going on. I think being able to step back and observe that a lot of your stuff is not my stuff, it's your stuff. And I can't own everybody's stuff right now. I think that's going to be one of the biggest reminders, which will help me just go, take a breath, just unpack one thing at a time, or just don't unpack yet.
Yeah. Are you one of the people that have to unpack it as soon as you get back, or does it all live for like a week or two and you do it slowly along the way?
Half and half. I'll unpack to a degree. I'll get to a certain point. I'm like, nope, stuff it. It can wait. Yeah. So and then I get other people frustrated because of their stuff, maybe going, where's my left shoe? And then yeah, that all gets tangled up into a wild web of stuff. What about you? Do you unpack when you get back?
I'm an unpacker. I will, because we'll at least go right into the garage with all of our stuff, and whatever needs to be washed gets dumped out right in there as soon as we get home. Everything else that needs to be packed away goes upstairs unless it lives in the garage. So I'm a dump it and we'll get to it, but everything else gets put away, right? At least in our rooms, and then it might live there for a week or so. But
yeah,
but I'm curious to see if implementing some kind of a system for unpacking around those needs of, well, we need to be that person that our kids just kind of melt into too, because they need that space getting home. And like if we're all running in the house, dumping what needs to be washed where it needs to be to get washed, and bringing everything upstairs and just sitting on the couch and doing nothing for the next few hours, like, does that plan or plan of attack kind of give everybody that space to decompress without the pressures? Or is it right to bed sometimes? And so maybe, like you said, recognizing that we all need that space to come off of the high of travel
Mm-hmm.
is
Probably need
step
to.
one of recognizing that we don't need to be triggered by the littlest little thing to put us into that tailspin, because it's going to happen.
I think you'd need to let go of a lot of guilt
Yeah. Like,
about the stuff that isn't happening like it
unless you
normally
really need
would.
it the
or-
next day, it can sit
Yeah.
in the luggage for one more day.
Yeah. And sometimes I think we have so many competing needs of this person needs to be fed, and this person needs a toilet, and this person needs a shower, and this person needs a sleep, and this person needs blah, 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 blah. So I think getting clearer on what people need might help a little bit too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can't not necessarily plan for self-care during our holiday time, but I
Unless it's
think
a
some
self-care holiday. I think most of it comes before and after our holidays.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Some good
but
things to think. I might have to do a recap episode.
I know. I think if you, yeah, I have a feeling that like the planning before and after make the during easier for that self-care. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well,
Guess we'll have a check-in in a few weeks to see how the holiday went for this next one that's coming up. And if we applied any of these techniques to our planning.
exactly. Yep. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
And
Next week.
we hope you can unstuff your muck.